Hi there and welcome to Leading Your Best Life. This is Leigh Farnell. Today, this interview is just so good. It's a video interview, but I'm sharing it on Spotify and Apple as well. It's with a guy called Kieran Barr, and Kieran is just a superstar. I met him via our pod squad here in Western Australia when he's out here with his family. But let me read his LinkedIn profile just to set the scene for you. Kieran Barr is an accomplished executive with a proven track record spanning diverse industries including financial services, pharmaceuticals, travel and telecommunications. He brings extensive experience in both CEO and CFO leadership positions, being renowned for tackling challenging assignments, spearheading startups and orchestrating successful turnarounds whilst consistently delivering results. Throughout his career, Kieran has excelled in fostering operational excellence by assembling, motivating and guiding high-performing teams. That's why it's just so fantastic to talk to him today. He brings a unique blend of strategic acumen and operational precision to navigate and conquer the most complex challenges. With 14 years of invaluable experience at GE Capital across various pivotal roles, Kieran led the international capital management function, served as the PRA regulatory capital lead, spearheaded joint ventures in Korea and successfully steered GE Capital Ireland through periods of growth and crisis as CEO. His expertise extends beyond executive roles. Kieran has served as an INED board director, executive manager, and is a Central Bank of Ireland approved person. Additionally, as a chartered accountant, he brings a robust financial foundation to the table. Based in Dublin, Ireland, Kieran is committed to leveraging his extensive experience and expertise to drive impactful results and contribute meaningfully to organisations seeking seasoned leadership. And right now, he's the CFO at the Gaelic Football Players Association, and you'll hear about that on this interview. Get your pen and pad out because it is so good. There's so much information. It's like a PhD in leadership, culture change, management, getting it from an A-grade player to straight to you. I mean, this is just a pleasure. You want to listen to this again and again, and please do give feedback. If you like it, share it with friends, share it with your colleagues, share it with other people on your leadership team. And then when you want to do something further about making some of these things a reality in your organisation, touch base with me and PDC. Here we go. Bolt yourself in. Well, folks, this is going to be a great one this morning. Leading Your Best Life. I've got Kieran Barr coming in from Ireland. Kieran and I met through our Pod Squad swimming group, and we had plenty of laughs and plenty of great times. And over coffee one morning, he started talking about what he did. Gaelic Football Players Association, but also General Electric. But we're going to get into that. Kieran, welcome to Leading Your Best Life, mate.
Morning. Thank you very much, Lee. Good to see you again.
Good. And you've done your swimming this morning over there?
I did about 3K. So I do in the swimming pool 5 days a week, 3K every morning. So just to keep me in shape for when I get back to Perth and get back into the sea.
Well, you are a competitive beast. As soon as I say go hard, you are as nutty as the rest of them at the front of the pack, trying to beat the young ones in the works. I mean, I know we've got so many kindred spirits. As we whatever age we are, we actually think we're 18 still. And I know you are swimming and water polo with your background, and the same here. So we know so many similar guys from the UK team and so on. So we a lot of connections. But today, Kieran, let's start with the Kieran Barr story. What's been your journey? I mean, we'll delve into it, but give us your evolution. Where did you start and where are you now?
So it's a sort of an interesting story for people that don't know anything about Northern Ireland. So the story starts in Belfast, in West Belfast, the Falls Road. In the 60s, I was born in the 60s, and I grew up. Most of my formative years were in the Troubles, as they were known. So the Troubles started in Northern Ireland in 1969 with the IRA's campaign of violence for the next 30 years. So I went to school in West Belfast, right in the middle of the Troubles, and I went to a grammar school. And the reason I went to a grammar school was I passed what's called the 11 plus. It was a state exam at 11. And I got free education because the British government would give you free education. Remember, Northern Ireland is in Britain and Southern Ireland is an independent republic. And so the people in Northern Ireland are benefiting from the policies of the UK. And free education. I was educated by the Christian Brothers. They built the school for all of these guys in West Belfast who would never go to grammar school, only for the fact that they built this school.
Mm.
And years later, when I met these brothers who had taught us as an adult, and I met them and said, "Look, what was the deal here?" They said it was a social experiment. It was a piece of social engineering.
Wow.
Our attitude was that these kids who are from the lower socioeconomic groups, their fathers are mostly unemployed. This is West Belfast had 80% unemployment for male adults at one stage. It was really, really terrible place. And they said there's only one way to change this cycle, and that's education. So that's where my story started. Got free education at second level, got free education at third level, went to Queen's University in Belfast, came out with a degree in physics and mathematics, went and did chartered accountancy in Dublin in the Republic because I couldn't get a job in Northern Ireland as a graduate. There were very, very few jobs for graduates. And if you were a Catholic graduate, then you had an even harder chance of getting a job. So I ended up in Dublin, had to move. Trained as an accountant, worked in a financial institution called Bank of Ireland, and then got headhunted into General Electric, into GE Capital. And spent most of the rest of my career in GE and GE Capital in various places in Ireland, in London, in Paris, back to London, in Seoul, South Korea, back to London, back to Dublin, and then I finished with GE. I was about to retire, finish up after all of that stuff, got headhunted to go and do a private equity CFO job, did that for a few years in London. And now for the last 4 years, I've been the finance guy for a players union. So I'm sort of semi-retired. I was a Gaelic player. I played hurling and Gaelic football at the elite level. And we have a union, which didn't exist when I played, but we now have a union for those players. And I'm the finance guy in that union. So that's what I do now, 3 days a week. So it keeps me connected with the players, keeps me connected with the game, and allows me to have a bit of fun as well, and also leverage my experience of my career with the players. So giving something back to the players.
Wow, fantastic, man. But right, we got to talk water polo. Tell us, where did you start playing water polo? Tell us that story, because there's some ripper stories in there too.
Yes. So my first sport wasn't actually hurling and Gaelic football. My first sport was swimming and water polo. So I started swimming when I was about 4 or 5. I have 2 older brothers, a younger sister and a younger brother, all of us thrown in. And I learned to swim in a place called the Falls Baths. And you should Google the Falls Baths. The Falls Baths are at the bottom of the Falls Road. And the Falls Baths were literally a
How do you spell falls? F-A-L-L, or how do you spell it?
F-A-L-L-S. Falls Road and the Falls Baths. F-A-L-L-S. And it was literally beside a big, huge mill. And there was a set of baths in there, literally not baths that you would have a bath in, and a tiny little swimming pool in this complex. And so when I was a kid and you went in, people would be having their weekly bath in the bath.
Yeah.
And it was a big long corridor of baths and hot water and all this. Because if you think about it, all the houses around were red brick terraced houses with an outside toilet and no bathroom.
Yeah. Well, I can see here it is here, Corporation Public Baths.
That's it. That's exactly that. There you go.
Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah. There it is.
And I learned to swim. There. The water polo club and the swimming club was called Cahalbrugh. I played water polo for Cahalbrugh. I luckily enough played for Ireland. I was good enough to play for Ireland. I got selected because we were in Northern Ireland. I got selected for the GB students team to go to the World Student Games in Zagreb. I think it was 86 or 87. And played for Ireland, played against England, Wales, Scotland, all that good stuff. And then when I got to 25, I had to make a choice because I was playing water polo at that level and hurling at a pretty high level. So I had to make a choice between the two, and I chose hurling. I just didn't have the time. And I was studying accountancy as well. So But the water polo was great. I had a great time playing water polo. I even played in America for a summer. I ended up going out to New York and playing for Iona College. Had a great time there for a summer playing for them and working as a lifeguard on the beach. So water polo has always been part of my background in swimming. So, and not why do I swim now? I swim now because I can't run. I've got arthritis from having played hurling and all that stuff in my ankle and my feet, so I have to do something else. So I went back swimming about 6 years ago, full on. So I'm now fully back into like training nearly every day. So,
well, mate, you're training every day with us, as was your wife. At Cottesloe, you've got your daughter out here now who does play water polo. So we're all part of the water polo swimming community, which is just a beautiful thing. So let's talk about Jack Welch. Let's talk about the GE days. Because you and I over coffee, there's so many stories around leadership and culture and communication. So if I was to ask you, what were some of the key things you learnt as a result of being in Jack Welch's ecosystem? Let's just talk for a second. Also, the compound performance of GE with Jack Welch as chief executive. So we know that Welch was nominated or given the award of I'm going to search it, Jack Welch, Manager of the Century. So he was given the award of Manager of the Century last century. So what did you learn? Maybe just free ball on that as I just go to Welch's Wikipedia there. Remind you.
Welch's performance as a CEO of GE was to deliver double-digit growth practically every quarter.
That was his target. Was that his target to do that, or stated objective, double-digit growth every quarter? Wow.
So a couple of very simple rules. So it's basically you need to be number one or number two in your market, or why would you bother? You've got to have a leading position and a position that people are prepared to pay a premium for. And so whether that's in engineering, or whether that's in technology, or whether that's in services, you've got to have a leading position and a reason for people to buy from you rather than from somebody else. And what Welch's magic was about was great companies, and there's great GE was a conglomerate of fantastic companies, turbine technology, energy management technology. They built locomotive engines, and then we did credit cards. So there was this wide range of services and products that GE did, but the thing that tied it all together was people. And so it was like once you built momentum in GE, you could attract really, really good people because the thing was successful. Everybody wants to be in somewhere that's successful. So part of the magic sauce was having this momentum of success and growth. And that's driven by people, ultimately driven by people. And so Welch was really, really focused on high performance in people. And he knew that it was people that made the difference. Now, he was ruthless. And he was ruthless because you don't get double-digit growth unless you've got A players. You just don't get it. You can't
high-grade players.
You can't carry Bs and Cs. In your leadership team, they've got to be A players. And he kept drumming that into everybody that was in a leadership position. One of the other things that was really, really important, and there's two other things that were really important. One was education. So educating and training managers in GE, and that helps them make connections with each other, helps them speak the same language, and short circuits bureaucracy by getting them to know each other and educated in the same methodologies, whether that's Six Sigma or whatever, blah, 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 loads of different things. It wasn't just Six Sigma. There's loads of things that we learned, but part of it was the community that you were creating by getting people together for that training. Okay, so that was one thing. And another thing I'd say is integrity. Welch used to go on and on and on about integrity, have a high say-do ratio.
Oh boy.
So if you're going to tell me you're going to do double-digit growth in 2024, then do it. If you're going to tell me you're going to lose $50 million this year because the market has completely changed, then come in at losing 45, not 50. Do it. Don't do something else. Don't say something and don't do it. Right? And another example of that integrity is that Welch used to say, look, I like your strategy. Okay, let's say he was talking to me, just hypothetically. He'd say, Kieran, I like your strategy. In fact, it's sort of okay. But if you can execute the ass off out of that thing, then that's worth more than the strategy. A half-baked strategy executed really, really well is better than this amazing strategy that you mess up delivering. So execution, this integrity of having a high say-do ratio was key to the success of your own career and GE as a company.
Wow.
Right? Now, some of your listeners, when they listen to this, will go, oh, but what happened to GE? It's now been broken up into 3 companies, etc. What happened to GE was the financial crisis of 2008, and GE effectively had 2 pieces, an industrial piece and a finance piece. And the finance piece was GE Capital, and the industrial piece was like all sorts of things, GE engines for aviation, locomotives, turbines, blah, blah, healthcare, all sorts of stuff. So you had this finance business that was married to an industrial business. The industrial business was AAA. So it could borrow money at AAA, give it to the finance company who could lend it to B plus, triple B, double A people, make a margin on it and put that money back into GE. That was the model. If that finance company wasn't a bank, although it was treated as a bank, it was the sister of an industrial company, and we lent money to our customers. That was the idea. So when the 2008 crisis hit and all of the banks meltdown, subprime crisis, the whole thing, what the Federal Reserve in America said was, GE Capital, you must hold much, much more capital on your balance sheet. Well, the only place where the capital could come from was the industrial side. And the industrial side needed the capital to run its industrial growth. So the equation didn't work anymore. And that's why GE had to be broken up the way it was. That's what's happened.
So it wasn't anything to do with their performance. So the model worked beautifully, but it was the collapse and then the government changing the rules of the game.
The rules of the game changed, and we didn't change quickly enough. If there's going to be one criticism of Jeff Immelt, who was the CEO after Jack Welch,
yes,
he did a brilliant job up until 2008, in my opinion. And I think he even did a brilliant job trying to cope with this massive change in mindset of the government of the United States and the Federal Reserve. But in hindsight, if he was having a cup of tea with me, I'd say, in hindsight, Jeff, we should have broken up the company quicker and get GE Capital off the balance sheet of the total company.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing he'd say, yeah. If you recall it, if I was to look back now, I'd go, we just have to get going and get GE Capital off the company's balance sheet.
Sell it to Citibank or sell it to a bank who could then use it with capital.
So what happened was most of the assets in GE Capital were sold at a premium.
Oh, that's good.
Because the franchises were so good. So Citibank, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan bought the assets all over the world and bought them at a premium. So the GE Capital actually was a really good business. It just didn't fit the model that the Federal Reserve looked at it and said, industrial conglomerate with a finance company, AAA. We then got downgraded to AA, which made it worse. And it was like, this doesn't work. This equation doesn't work. But look, see, if you just besides that, that's the macro view. If you dive into what was making GE Capital, GE Company successful, it was their focus on that people equation that goes back to and it goes back to this high integrity of say-do ratio. Now, one of the really interesting things behind all of that, Leigh, was HR. And HR in GE is the best HR I've ever seen in anywhere that I've ever worked. Because HR, when Jack Welch built up the HR division, the HR people, he was really saying to them and challenging them to say, you're the gatekeepers of my A players. You're the gatekeeper. Don't be bringing me somebody for promotion that is not an A player. And when we find problems, you've got to get me an A player to go fix that problem. Now, when you're talking about a company that has 600,000 employees,
oh my God, yeah,
that is some engine.
Yeah.
And I experienced that firsthand in Ireland in a tiny little business, that engine working, where you had senior HR people coming to meet you because someone had you on the radar as an A player and saying, is this guy really what we think he is? We want to see for ourselves what he's like. We want to talk to the employees, do a 360 on him. We want to get him into some training courses to see what he's like with his colleagues and other A players. Let's test this guy in a couple of jobs to see if he's any good. And then if he's still an A player, then he's on the list for the next promotion.
Wow.
That's how it worked. It was as scientific as that.
What a formula, as you say. Straight away, get me an A player to fix that problem. If we've got a problem, get me an A player to fix it. Where's the list of the A players? And as you say, 360-degree feedback, training with other A players to see how does the person apply themselves and how does he or she relate to the other A players. And then let's give them some pilot tests to see how they go when you actually give them a job to do it. Then it's like tick, tick, tick. So it's a incredible process and system, which again, I love, having studied Welsh. And again, I said to you, our Japanese friend Hideo Hector from running BSI Japan is an ex-GE guy, and he talked about mentoring. And again, what I want to talk to you about, you talked about the importance of training, and Welsh, I can hear the mantras. And I say to people, this, great leaders have mantras that they drum into people. They say over and over again. So he said, one, integrity. And this whole language, he's brought language in. I know straight away, boundarylessness was one of the things, not breaking down the silos. Another one was he wanted if the quote be something like, we will out invent the competition. In other words, I think it was something about using online. How do we actually use online to get rid of existing structures and systems? There was a word he had for that. I can't remember that. But another word here, as you say, is a high say-do ratio. He's created a language within GE there, which again, I think all great leaders do. But let's just talk about this: the leadership program, the training. I know that from my recollection, Welsh fronted pretty much most of those programs. So talk to me about that. And then let's talk about the mentoring program that went on in GE. So let's start with the leadership program.
So they had their own university, a place called Crotonville, which is just north of New York. It's about an hour north of New York. And it's in Ossining. It's called Crotonville, Ossining, New York. Ossing, I think the place. Now, the new GE, currently, they sold Crotonville about a year ago. But Crotonville was A-star, 5-star campus for leadership training in GE across the world. And Crotonville, you go to Crotonville with a group of, let's say, 60 other leaders for a 3-week, 4-week program, complete immersion. And in the middle of that program, Welsh would show up, or Jeff, there's Crotonville. Welsh would show up, or Immelt would show up and spend an hour talking to the class, telling you what he thought, what was going on today, where he thought the company was going, and then you'd be a questions and answers. One of the things that I was interesting at that, and the values GE changed and got reinvented over the years, right? But they used to give us a card. Talk about inventing language. They used to give us a card with the values on it. And when I started in GE, they gave me a card with the values on it. And I used to be able to say to people, if you want to know what a GE person is like, then look at their values. And Welch's values were these: edge, execution, energy, and energize. Edge. Have an edge, right? Either go over the competitors in negotiations. You've got to be pushing. You've got to have an edge. This is not comfortable. This can't be easy. You've got to push yourself. You've got to push others. Have an edge. Execution. High say-do ratio. Get things done. Just get things done. And move the needle, move the football, move the company, get stuff done. Energy. Bring energy. Have energy. Be bringing something to the table. Don't take it away. And you've got to be fit. Get physically fit. Take care of yourself, your mind, your body, your soul, your family, your friend. Be clear. Educate yourself. That's your job. That's your energy. And then lastly, energize. I thought it was a really clever thing to say. And energize was make sure you're mentoring people, make sure you're helping other colleagues in other parts of GE, and that you're giving your energy to other people. Wow. So have energy, be responsible for yourself, but energize everybody else. So bring something to the table and bring up people with you. So one of the criteria of being an A player was how many people have you promoted out of your business?
Wow. And
people used to say, that's a mad thing. Initially, I used to go, what's this all about with Welch and Emil? And promote people away, basically bring up your own team, mentor and coach your own team, and then give them away to people. And Welch used to say, and Emil used to say, yeah, absolutely. That's the sign of an A player. You've got a pipeline of talent and you're energizing the rest of the company. Now, those values evolved. So if you put in GE values history, you'll see that over the years, those values evolved and the language modernized as the company's generations changed over every 20 years. So you had words like invent come in. So there was other types of words being used, but I remember it's like anything, the first time you're exposed to something. And when I entered GE the first time, I was sort of blown away by all this stuff, but overwhelmed. And I was given my card and it was like, here's the 4 values. And it was like, drum them into my head, So yeah, like that. And Crotonville here's the way Crotonville worked, right? It was a 5-star hotel. It was the campus was immaculate.
Yeah.
And the reason why we were told after we went in, we were told, of course it's immaculate. We are one of the biggest companies in the world, one of the most profitable companies in the world. You are working for us. We're with you. This represents us. So if anybody afterwards asks you where you were, tell them what it was like. Tell them what it's like to work for GE. Tell them what the training's like in GE. And it was part of building the brand of GE to say, we have the best people and we train them the best way. We expose them to the best experiences. That's why we're such a good company.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example.
Yeah. They didn't cut corners. Yeah. I was looking for the values. There's an article in Harvard Business Review, Jeff Emmelt talking about change, but he doesn't talk about the values there. But this whole idea, we see this sometimes, managers going, well, where can we save on accommodation and trying to cut corners? But as you say, what is it saying when you start putting people into B? We want you to be an A grade player, but we're putting you into a B and C grade facility. Yeah. So you're going to give me an example. Yeah.
So I was going to give you an example of Crotonville, right? So we're sitting in Crotonville, 60 of us in this auditorium. It was called the Pit. So it was like a theater, like semicircle, and Welch would stand in the middle and the lecturers would be in the middle and you're all sitting there, big leather chairs, beautiful. Oh my God, it's like a cinema, beautiful. And tiered up the thing, just really impressive. And they modernized it over the years for all the Wi-Fi tools and all the funky stuff. So I'm going to give you an example of one of the classes we had. So where Crotonville is, it's on the Hudson. And you look across the Hudson and you can see West Point. It's on the other side.
Right.
So we were told one day, we have very special guests for the whole afternoon for 4 hours. we have 2 colonels, 2 PhDs coming across from West Point, who all they do their whole career in the American Army is teach and study leadership. That's all they do.
Wow.
So for 4 hours, we had these two guys, 2 colonels, both PhDs, who'd spent their whole careers in the US and were studying since Vietnam. All they did was study leadership. And then they were part of the curriculum of West Point of teaching leadership to the next set of officers in the United States Army. Extraordinary. Mm. So we sat and listened to their stories for 4 hours, all the research they'd done, what they'd learned from Vietnam, and every single conflict right up to the Iraq and the Gulf War. Mm-hmm. And they explained to us what their here's what they did. Very interesting. They did post what was it called? They called firefights. So they post engagement interviews with the combatants. What did your platoon lieutenant do well? What did he not do well? What did you feel? What did you do? So they came up with this questionnaire of 50 questions that they kept using. They refined these questions over about 20 years. And then by the time they got to the Gulf War, they had their 20 questions really, really well constructed and over the years. And that's what they were doing, surveying soldiers, loads of them, and finding out what leadership was like, what was good and bad. What did the soldiers on the ground think good leadership looked like? Mm. So we're sitting in the class like this, right, listening. And they said, right, what do you think we found? What do you think we found was the number one criteria for a soldier in a leader? Guy that's on the ground shooting, his life's on the line, his life and death. He comes out of combat and we ask him a bunch of questions and we're looking for the number one criteria that he would look for in a leader. Mm-hmm. Why would you follow Leigh or why would you follow Kieran into war? Mm. So we all started going, charisma, okay, write it up on the board, communication skills, clear strategy, intellect, all good stuff. And the guy said, all good, it's all on the list, but not the number one. And they said, the number one by far is competency.
Just they're competent at the job.
Competency. They will follow competency into life and death before anything else. Competency in a leader. So we said, give us an example. And they said, we'll give you an example. I'll give you a couple of them. Said they're in the desert in Iraq. And one of this platoon come out and we interviewed the whole platoon and we said to them, do you like your lieutenant? No. What do you not like about him? It's a pain in the ass. He's always on our back. He's actually do you think he's any good? Yeah, he's the best lieutenant we've ever had. Said, but you just told us you don't like him. He said, yeah, we really don't like him. He's a complete pain in the ass. But I'll tell you what, here's what happened. We got caught out under fire for 2 days. Tanks couldn't get to us, smoke, fire, no air cover, nothing. We had to dig in. We were getting attacked and we were stuck there for 24 hours on our own. Nobody could get to us, blah, blah, blah. And we all had 2 liters of water. And our lieutenant drilled into us for the 6 months before we went into combat. Got to have water. You've got to have water, blah, 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 all the time. And we used to get fed up. He'd put us on a charge. We'd get busted. Everybody had to have water all the time, have extra water, And guess what? We get into this firefight. We get caught. We get cut off. We're there for 24 hours in the baking sun overnight. And we all had enough water and we survived.
Because of
competency. Right? And then they told us about 5 other stories of things that the soldiers all said, do you like your commander? No. He's a real pain in the ass. But he's the best guy we've ever had because he drilled us in this thing. And guess what? It came to fruition. We were under fire and we needed this thing, and we were all able to do it, and we were doing it blindfold. We could do it with our eyes closed, and it saved our lives.
Wow.
Competency. It was amazing.
Wow.
So it was a very interesting study because they extrapolated it into all sorts of things, into training programs, into the way they train their leadership, the way they identify leaders, all sorts of things they use it for. It's amazing, and it really, really scientific. And it was extraordinary that this idea, and the way I describe it was, it's almost like the invisible frequency. It's like radio waves. It's like the radiation of leadership, the ripple effect of leadership. You can't see it, but every time you mentor somebody or coach a team or have a meeting, you're radiating your leadership invisibly. And people mightn't like what you're saying. And Welch was a real hard ass. And lots of people would say Welch was just a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And he either fired me or he did that, whatever. But if you really sat back and said to people, well, I know you don't like the guy, but was it clear what he was doing, and was it clear why he was doing it? Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And competency. And again, we come back to the Good to Great book, Level 5 leadership, where the Level 5 leader is very big on the discipline of systems. And I suppose if you go to competency, what I'm hearing from you is that the competent leader doesn't cut corners, or doesn't allow you to cut corners on critical survival factors. I'm thinking immediately of, when we're training people in sales, I want to drill them on following the right needs discovery questions process. I want to drill them on handling you're too expensive objection. You can't cut corners on those things, because, as you say, in the heat of battle, in the sales battle, for example, why should I buy from you? Or I want you to cut your price, or I don't think you're worth it, or I think you're too expensive. You better be able to handle that man-to-man, person-to-person situation, because if you crumble at that point, it's a bit like 2 days in the desert without water. You're going to die. You're going to do, and I love that military saying. In fact, it's in my proposal. I'd rather sweat on the battlefield, sweat on the training ground, than bleed on the battlefield. No,
you hit that. Look, you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
And like, see if a prospective customer says to you, why should I buy from you? You've got to have an answer, and it's got to be legitimate, and it's got to have integrity.
Yeah.
You can't be saying, oh, buy from us because it's the best product. Well, show me why it's the best. Tell them, where's your evidence that it's the best?
Yeah.
You've got to have your story right.
That's right.
And you got to be prepared. So you got to have done the sweat.
That's right.
Because you're going to be asked the question.
That's right. That's right. Well, that's literally one of the drills I do very early on in any sales training program, is what I call the "Why should I buy from you" exercise. And invariably, 90% of people are weak, poor, inadequate, anemic at answering that question, why should I buy from you? Yet if you go to their website or look at their brochure, you say, mate, all the words are there, so why aren't they coming out of your mouth? Because you haven't drilled it, It's like, if I could get them to do 20 push-ups just for punishment, I would at that point. It's like, so, and people hate that. In fact, even one of the clients the other day said, I don't like those military quotes. But the fact is, the thing about military is they've been working with humans for 2, 3, 4, 5,000 years as to how do you actually mobilize a group of people. And you've already talked about getting them all on the same page. And the fact that training and getting people, and I love the fact you said immersion. I love immersion training. We just, oh no, we'll do a half hour here and a half hour there. No, immersion, because that's when you really find out, is the person an A-grade player? You throw problems at them. Like beautiful, beautiful stories. Let me go to you personally, because there's plenty of energy coming out of you. And by the way, one of the things we say is leadership is everything, and you don't manage people, you manage energy. So I didn't even know that Welch talked about, one, managing your own personal energy, and at the same time, the importance of energizing others. What energy are you bringing to the room? Again, as you say, a can do, let's make it happen, possibility energy, or negative, or that can't be done, or blah, blah, blah. And I think that's certainly one of the differences between A-grade players and B and C grade players. They're talking about, bring me solutions to the table. Don't keep bringing me problems and blocking possibilities for us. But let's talk about you, Kieran. What motivates Kieran Barr?
It's a funny thing. I've thought about this a lot over the years, and I have two older brothers. And so when I started off swimming, I was chasing the two older brothers. When I started playing water polo, I was chasing the two older brothers. When I started at grammar school, I was chasing the two older brothers. When I went to university, I was chasing the two older brothers. When I went and did accountancy, I was chasing the two other brothers subconsciously.
Mm.
And so I've been competing with my two older brothers since I was tiny.
Mm.
And so that was my motivation. And I figured that out when I was in my 30s. It took me that long. I was a bit slow learner. And I was like, hang on a minute, why are you doing this? It's got to be a better reason than like you just like get up in the morning and like doing this.
Beat your
And so
brother.
I figured out that I was competing for self-esteem, for attention,
Mm-hmm.
for legitimacy, for affirmation from my two older brothers. They don't know this, by the way. I've told them since, but I haven't told them in this level of detail. I've mentioned to them a few times, and we've had this conversation at family weddings and stuff. I said, look, and I've said it publicly. People have said to me, "Who's your best coach? Like, why were you a good water polo player? Why were you a good hurler?" I said, well, the best coaches I ever had were called Mark and Damien. And they're like, who are those two guys? I said, well, that's brother number one and brother number two, and I'm number three. Without the two of them beating me up, kicking me around, chasing me, taking the ball, me trying to fight with them, they were the best two coaches I ever had. And they were both actually very good players. So I was lucky to get two really good coaches. So intrinsically, my motivation has come from a place of inferiority, an imposter complex, an inferiority complex that says you're not good enough. You've got to keep proving yourself. And that's not personally for me, that's worked. That's
No
not a
doubt
bad
about it.
motivation. I find that that's fine. I'm
Yep.
okay with that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've become comfortable with the fact that that is my motivation. I'm a bit more relaxed about it now. I'm not trying to prove myself anymore. It's become much more of a thing where my motivation is to stay healthy, and live a good life, which means do good things, right? Be nice to people, put energy in, don't take energy away, add to things, don't detract from them, help where you can help, give advice where you can give advice. My motivation being, well, I'm trying to now give back something that I got. So I got a huge amount from people over the years, either consciously or unconsciously, either professionally or casually. And so now it's in the last 10 years ish or more, it's been, well, what's the chances of giving something back here and just do some good.
Yeah,
So you get
brilliant.
that stage in your life, Lee, where financially, physically, you're in a good place. And so, the motivation isn't now, I need to make sure my wife and family are taken care of. It's now, well, we've sort of sorted that out ish. So let's look and see if we can do some good somewhere else,
Yeah,
So
beautiful.
there you go.
Because what we know, and again, because I'm having studied and been around high performance my whole life, and particularly in organizations, and studied sport because I've always wanted to be better at it myself. Years ago, and I may have said this at coffee too, one of my mates said, what's the secret of being good at sport? And the answer was brothers, and we look at it, and again, it can be on the female side as well. Sam Kerr, growing up as a female soccer player, with her brother and father, and but the Ablett family, there's a whole tribe of them in Geelong, great footballers. You've got the Selwood family, a great brother. You've got, even right now, Carlton, the Mackay brothers, the Mac and Macintosh, that just goes on and on and that. But the ecosystem, the environment, the French say, the forest shapes the tree. The ecosystem shapes the person. It takes a village to raise the child. So here you are, another great example of the brothers beating you, chasing, but it toughen you, the resilience factor, the skill level. It's so important to have that ecosystem, isn't it?
Yeah. And also you got to realize as you become a coach yourself and you're coaching in sport, you got to realize that, and I found this really, really interesting. There's a guy called Frank Dick who is an athletics coach in the UK, right? And he's now, I think he might be dead now, but he's a very old man if he's still alive. And he was an athletics coach through the 80s for the GB team. And he basically defined what winning is. And I think there's a really great definition. It's on YouTube. He said, I took a kid, he was interviewed at the side of the track, and he said, so what do you think a winner is? And who do you think winner? How do you train a winner? Blah, all this really complicated question. I said, look, hang on. He said, I coached a kid 2 weeks ago. She ran 100 meters in 20 seconds. Okay. And she said to me, well, how did you think I did? I said, you did really well. Let's see you next week. We'll train all week and we'll be at the race next week. Next week, we go to the race and she comes last again, but runs it in 19 seconds. And the kid comes over and says, Coach, I came last. And he said, no. You might have come last. There was 8 runners and you came last. Last week, you ran 20 seconds. This week, you ran 19 seconds. That's a win. Let's go back to training and next week, and let's make it 18 seconds. So in a sense, it took me a long time to figure out that when you're coaching players of all sorts of abilities. And it's great if you can coach Carlton or coach Collingwood and you're dealing with all A players. Fantastic, top of the tree. You got to remember, even in that group, and as you go down through the groups, people have different motivations for playing, different abilities, different attitude. And what's winning for them could be literally just kicking the ball better the next week or finding a better pass. That could be the win for them. So coach to what you're seeing in front of you, not something that you're inventing in your head or you want to imagine everybody to be. Deal with the reality of what they're like and define winning within that reality, right? So you can't ask somebody who's, starting off, is a bit overweight, isn't fit, and expect them to run 100 meters in 10 seconds. You say to them, we're going to take this piece by piece, and our goals are 20 seconds, 19 seconds, 18 seconds, and let's work. And that's winning. That's winning.
Well, that's why I love the Japanese concept of Kaizen, continuous and never-ending improvement. And as you said, Six Sigma was such an important part of the GE mentality, the GE playbook. So let's talk about that for a second, how that was used, because I think you talked about that part of the training was getting everybody operating on the same methodology. So not only was it execution, but community and same methodology. So let's talk Six Sigma and Kaizen for a second, how that worked.
So part of that is making sure that you're dealing with evidence. So that's making sure that decisions are made on facts, not on someone's opinion, not on a feeling, that you base the stuff on evidence. And you've got data and you've got tools that allow you to analyze the data, number one. Number two, you have a language that allows you to communicate with each other in relation to that set of facts. So now all of a sudden people are short-circuiting decisions because they are able to communicate with each other specifically to do with the tools and the facts that are being presented in relation to a problem. So root cause analysis, fishbone stuff, all that jazz, right? So now you've got a set of tools, you've got a set of facts and information and data, and you're able to analyze it and talk to each other very quickly about what you're seeing. Thirdly, you're now making people work together in a consistent, logical fashion. So that's glue. So now you've got tools, you've got data, you've got communication, you've got glue. And so all of a sudden, whether it's a sporting team or a business, people are starting to read, to move, to read body language, to react quicker than as if they were complete strangers. So now you've got momentum. 2 + 2 = 5 now, because you've got this unseen, hard to define momentum. But where does it come from? It comes from the data, the tools, communication, community, interaction, and the glue. And now you're getting this reinforcement of that sort of methodology. Now, that's what it's about. And then what I like to say is then, if you add that into other disciplines, so let's just take the discipline of finance. And I was a finance guy, right? We're doing a plan. And I say to everybody, let's do the plan for 2025. Here's 24's actuals. We need growth. We need this. We need. We can either take cost out or grow the top line, grow the margin. What are we going to do? And if we've all been trained in Six Sigma, we all immediately start talking the same language. What's our products like? How can we get efficiencies in that? Are we investing? Where are we investing? Why would we do that? Where's the best margin? All of a sudden, the language is moving really quickly in everybody's work, and we're iterating really quickly through the plans. And the plan is a tool to allow us to express what we think 25 will look like. Well, that's all it is. The plan, of course, the plan's going to be wrong, but it's part of the toolkit that allows us to have this conversation really quickly and efficiently to plan what we think we're going to do with our products and services in 2025. So all of a sudden, in a practical way, I'm now talking the same language as the engineers, and I'm the finance guy, because they're saying to me, we think if we invest this, we can change that, we can do. And I say, well, what margin am I going to get out of that? Well, that's up to you, Kieran, with the other guys, because we think we can take 5 basis points or 10% out of our raw material reusage and that. I'm going, perfect. I know what you're talking about. Let me go to the other guys on the product marketing side to say, guess what they're thinking of doing? And we get them all in a room and we're all talking the same language. That's efficient. It's effective. It allows you to iterate really quickly. And it's opening up people's minds for what the possibilities are. Versus, I'm going to tell you, Leigh, because I'm the engineer. Engineering is going to tell you the answer. Stay in your lane. We'll tell you what's going to happen. Not in GE. Everybody in the room, everybody talking and questioning and arguing and asking and verifying. But did you check the data? Well, what would you know about data? Well, I did the Six Sigma thing like you did. I want. What about the two? Did you try that too? Yeah, we did this way. Okay, well, so you're now building this system, and it becomes a system that has all these parts in it that are stuck together. And I tell you what, across a global company, that is serious value in getting people connected who speak different languages, are in different cultures, are in different markets, to be able to get that sort of synergy when you're trying to sell an ultrasound machine in 50 countries.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, you've used the word right there, synergy. Buckminster Fuller, synchronized energy. How do we synchronize the energy as distinct from the energy being asynchronous, where we're clashing, as you say, finance talking finance language, clashing with engineering, clashing with marketing, but as Welch cleverly using Six Sigma as the common platform to analyze data and have intelligent conversations, because in the absence of that, as we say, in the absence of systems, personality takes over. And so the loudest or the biggest bully or the, whatever, and all of a sudden you don't have 2 + 2 = 5. You have 2 - 2, because it becomes the biggest ego in the room versus the other way around. The other thing I want to touch on then is, of course, he had that ranking system where literally he got rid of the bottom 5%. So let's talk about that, the managing KPIs and the rating system and how people knew what the game was there.
People knew what the game was, Leigh, because let's go to a water polo analogy, right? There's 13 players on a water polo team, and we've got 20 kids showing up every week to training. Never miss 20 kids. Every week. We do a pre-season for 6 weeks. We train 3 times a week. We play 5 pre-season games. Everybody gets chance to play the whole thing. And you name your first 13 for the first match, which means 7 players didn't get selected. How did you do it? It's not, it happens in every walk of life every day. So GE was doing exactly what I've just described. And they had a system about the values, about performance of your company, about 360 feedback from your peers and from your subordinates and from your managers. And you put all of that into a system and you come up and you rank people and say, let's rank the 10 people from 1 to 10. Let's rank them. And then the guy who's a 10, is he an A player? No. So what are you going to do? Are you going to train him? Are you going to promote him or demote him? Are you going to give him the hard message? Or are you going to fire him? What are you going to do? So all the bottom 10% thing, that idea was forcing the conversation to say, what you as a manager, you've got 100 employees, rank them 1 to 100. What's the plan for the bottom 10? What's the plan? And for the top 10, by the way, they're the A players. What's the plan for them? So, and then the bunch in the middle need to be moved either up or down, or so all they were doing, Leigh, was forcing the conversation that any coach of any team has ever had when they've had to pick 13 players out of 20. That's all they were doing. They were forcing the conversation because in work, unfortunately in work, in professional life, the last thing anybody wants to do as a manager is have the hard conversation about performance with somebody. They don't want to do it. Let's give everybody a 10% bonus. No, everybody. Why, Kieran? No, I just want to give everybody 10%. We did really well. Let's just give everybody 10%. Everybody would be happy. No, hang on a second. Rank them all 1 to 100, and the top 10, I want to give them a 50% bonus, and the bottom 10, nothing. That's too hard. No, it's not too hard. What did you ask them to do? What did you measure? What's their KPIs? That's the convert. And were you upfront with them and told them what you were going to be measuring them on? If that's clear, just like I said about at the very start of this call about Jack Welch, nobody ever was unsure about what and why.
Fantastic. Yeah. Nobody was ever sure. Yeah. Brilliant.
That was the bottom line.
Mate,
that was the bottom line. What am I asking Leigh to do? And why am I asking Leigh to do it? And what's the measurement of what I'm asking Leigh to do? And at the end of the month or the end of the quarter or at the end of the year, he hasn't done what I asked him to do, and he can't tell me why this is different, then his ranking is at the bottom. If he's beaten it and done more than what I've asked him to do, and he's got a why and it's all, then he goes to the top. But I've got to be, the manager has got to be clear about what and why and the measurement. That's my responsibility. You're not doing Leigh any favors if I'm not doing my job as a manager. And Welch, that's the process of this forced ranking performance management system in GE. It was forcing the manager to do their job. It wasn't actually about the employees. It was about the managers doing their job correctly, which was have a plan, be focused, be clear on what you're trying to do, and reward the people that do it, and don't reward the people who don't do it.
Right. Fantastic, mate. Just so I'm sure off the back of some of the things you're saying, one, I know that the language I've created over the years, I talk about collective brain power, which is that whole getting that common language going of, collective brain power working in synergy, which is what, Welsh and, you guys are doing with using Six Sigma and common language. And then you're talking about what I use as what I call a KRA sheet, not a job description, but what are the key areas you're responsible for? What are the measures and what are the target numbers? And this is what we're going to be having the conversation on in the 90-day or the 6-month period. So that, as you said, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? How are you being measured on it? And you're building in accountability. And you say, too many people will want the role of manager, but don't want to build in accountability. And of course, whether it be sport or business, if there isn't some accountability, it's very easy to stay asleep in the comfort zone versus the learning and the growth and the high performance is outside the comfort zone. I go, what makes a high performer? You study Ronaldo, and invariably, I saw a video clip the other day of one of the guys talking about all the extra training that Ronaldo did. Besides the extra training sessions, the same as David Beckham, you can go on to Netflix and see the Beckham 3 training sessions a day with 3 different squads. I've said to the water polo kids, you want to be extraordinary, you will do the extra. You get there early, you do the extra training sessions. You don't do 3 sessions a week, you do 10 or 13 sessions a week. I mean, one of my philosophers was a guy followed in rugby league and rugby union. He learned from his father, who said, you may not be the biggest or the strongest or the best ball handler, but you can be the fittest. So let's start with being the fittest and see where that takes you. let
Yeah.
alone then, work on your ball handling and other things. So,
Yeah.
so, mate, let's talk about you. You've already talked a bit about your daily routines and your swimming and so on. Let me ask you this. Are you much of a reader? Do you read books? Are you a reader or a listener to anything, or have you been over the years, or not really?
Yeah, no, I have over the years, and a lot of it's to do with management and coaching, and some of it's to do with sport. And then I like reading crime novels and fiction and not. So I like reading history. I
Yeah.
like reading historical stuff, either to do with war or to do with leadership. So various leaders and some obscure stuff, and people would say to me, "Oh, you should read that book about such and such a person." I like that historical stuff. I like U.S. history. I find the U.S. a fascinating project. Like the idea, I'm listening to a podcast at the minute, and the rest is history, it's called.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the sections I've picked is the American War of Independence, because I know something about it, but I'd like to learn more about it and what was going on behind it, the Boston Tea Party, all that jazz, Paul Revere. It's very, very interesting, because when you start looking at the detail of history, it's not the simple formula that you think it is.
No.
Bad guy, good guy, blah, and so you start finding out that there was other subtleties, that somebody tried to do something through legislation. For instance, the Boston Tea Party was caused by a legislation change in the UK to fix a problem in the East India Company, not the Americas. And so you find out things that you go, and so I love learning that, because I think that's got relevance to any situation you're in today. That I'm still involved in the players union, that I might be in negotiating something or giving advice to somebody on something. It helps you keep your mind open and keep your mind in a learning frame.
Correct.
And you've got to be, I think you've got to keep yourself learning, because you're going to learn something.
Yes.
Right? So I like reading, and I like reading history. And I like listening to podcasts about history. I like Le Carre novels, all of that science stuff. Mr. George Smiley is one of my favorite characters.
Yes.
I like the subtlety of that and the complexity of it, that it's not the obvious answer. You've got to dig a bit, you've got to think a bit, you've got to connect things. And it's the same in business. There's never an obvious solution. I'm a huge fan of Apple. I have an Apple phone, I have an iPad, blah, 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 AirPod, all that. I'm really interested in how Jobs did what he did and why he did it. Disney, I'm a huge fan of Disney, the company, and what it did, and what Disney did himself and his brother and the family did invent Disney. I recently just listened to a couple of podcasts, a couple of interviews with Jamie Dimon, the JP Morgan chief executive, who was a classmate in his MBA with Jeff Immelt of GE.
Oh.
Very interesting view of the world and economics and geopolitics and where we're all going and what he thinks the things are. So I'd like to do that, to watch things and listen to things and read things about history on one hand, and sort of business and economics and banking in general on the other hand. So, and then coaching. I would read a certain amount about coaching, sports coaching, just stuff, just general interest stuff about coaches that are really good and why are they good. A guy called Wooden in the US was a
John Wooden,
basketball coach. Yeah. Read his stuff, various other coaches, and I watch and listen to stuff like that.
Well, as you say, you learn things, and it's also incredibly inspiring. Wooden has that pyramid, the character pyramid. He's talking about building people and getting them to tie their shoelaces up. Coming back to drills and discipline, getting them to tie their shoelaces up the right way so they don't come out, like just all those little things, which again, he's a pain in the ass. But again, his record was just incredible from a coaching point of view, let alone the same being Alex Ferguson and all of the Manchester United coaching stuff as well. So
one thing I'd add about that, right? Some coaches over the years, there's a common theme with great coaches, is all of them say, "Why were you a winning coach?" And they all say, "I had great players."
Yeah.
It's not rocket science when you've got great players.
That's right. You've got to have those that talent out in the field. I know.
Yeah.
So let's go a step further. Now that you're with the Gaelic Players Association, how have you applied some of these lessons into your current position? What are some of the things you've applied?
So first of all, in terms of technology, moved them from 4 years ago, server-based, in an office. You had to go into the office to log on to get the data to do your work. Moved everything into the cloud. Everything is on Microsoft now. We've got a database of players on a thing called Microsoft Dynamics 365. Everybody's on Microsoft in terms of their laptops and their desktops. Everybody's mobile phone is all linked into that. Every piece of data is in the cloud. They can work from home. They can work from their car. So we have a staff of 12 people. Before COVID and before I started, everybody used to come to Dublin to work every day of the week, even though they might have been traveling 200 miles or 100 miles to get there. Everybody now works from home, can work seamlessly in terms of the data that they need and the technology that they need. So that was the first thing I did. I just looked at the systems and the technology they had, and I said, this is out of date. So we revamped the whole thing. That was the first thing. Second thing we did was they changed CEO, and I was interim CEO while they changed CEO. So I helped them restructure and figure out what they needed to do with the next CEO. They asked me to do it. I said, I'm too old. You need a young person who looks like the player, who talks like the current player, who's just finished their career maybe 5 years ago. They need to be the figurehead. So that's who we found, a great guy called Tom Parsons. One of the biggest contributions I think I make is to be his right-hand man. So I'm the older guy, the seasoned veteran on the sideline that he comes to and says, what do you do in this situation? How do I handle that situation? And so we've been able to look at the profile of staff that we have and look at it systematically. So one of the things I think I've contributed to is to say that we need to be evolving our staff and training our staff and turning them over every 3 to 5 years. What do I mean by that? I think players need to retire from playing. If they've got an interest in being in the union, we've got to give them a pathway to being an employee of the union, which we've got 12 of them. Mm-hmm. We train them up as either a coach or a project manager, a negotiator, or an organizer, and get them 3 to 5 years of education in that area, loads of experience working for the union, and then go get yourself another job, grow into another job. And that's now what we've got going. We've got that cycle going where we've got turnover, people being promoted out of our players' union and into professional jobs that they can go and push their career onto, whether that's in project management, whether that's in business management, or whether it's in coaching and career coaching, personal coaching, that sort of stuff. So that's what I've contributed to on the organizational side. On the other side, in terms of finance and the discipline and control of finance, I brought a bit to that. And then lastly, negotiation. So we are in constant negotiation mode with the governing body. So the union, we get money from the governing body to take care of the players. And so we're about to go into another cycle. Every 3 years, we negotiate a new contract. We're about to go into that contract. And I think I sit behind our negotiating team, our CEO, and basically help them prepare, but also help them to react to what's being thrown at them from the other side. So in any negotiation, you got to know what you want.
Sure.
You don't necessarily have to tell the other side, the counterparty, that's what you want. But you've got to be very clear in your own head what you want and what a win would be for you. Secondly, you need to be clear on what a win for them is. So you've got to be clear what's their needs, where are they coming from, what can they do, and so that you can get a decent negotiation and a decent contract. Unless you're absolutely miles apart, that you understand what you want, you figure out what you think they need or want, and if you're a million miles away, then that's going to be a very difficult negotiation. So prepare for it, because eventually both sides are going to have to move. So that's the last bit that I help with, that strategy of negotiation and the tactics of negotiation when we get into it. And then the last thing I'd say is problem solving. So there are many crises every couple of months. Players aren't happy with how they're being treated. Something happens with some factor or facility that they use, whatever. And so we problem solve and firefight. So a little bit of that as well. So there you go. Yeah. So it's pretty good fun.
Fantastic, mate. So what does the future hold for Kieran Barr? What's the next 3 to 5 years and beyond look like for you?
So we have a daughter who lives in Perth, and she's a doctor. So she looks like, if things go the right way, she could be there permanently. If you know, that's a very strong possibility. So let's see if that happens and works out. I think if that happens, we've got our second daughter is in musical theatre, so she travels around the world, so she could be living anywhere. And then the last daughter is training as a midwife and will qualify in 26 and probably go to Australia in 27. So I think Australia is in my future somehow. We probably will consider our options in 2027 and after. We'll be in our mid-60s by that stage, 63, I think. And then make a decision about whether we start to spend more time in Australia. If in Perth, if we decided to do that, then we'd have to look at what we do work-wise, and if we want to still continue to do the work that we're doing or not, or do something else. I think I'll continue to work, but I'm in the lucky position where I'd be able to choose how much and what, and the same with my wife. I think we'd make some sort of choices in relation to that. But location, there's something in GE that they taught us. There's 3 things you can probably control about your career. One is location, one is the business that you're in, and one is the function that you're in. So I can do location, and I'm pretty flexible with location. So we could end up in Perth. And then the next 2 things, function. Well, I'm a finance guy. I've been a CEO. I've been a CFO. I've been a coach from sports. So there's lots of things that I could do from a functional point of view. So that's pretty open. And I'd be relatively open with that. And then the last one is business. What type of business would you be like to be in? So I've been in finance most of my career, as in financial services. I've been in pharmaceuticals and private equity. And I've done a little bit of telecom. So there's the sort of areas that I know something about. Financial services I know quite a lot about. So maybe that's where I'll end up, back in there, maybe in like non-executive director stuff or consulting or something, maybe. But I would put it in the order that I've put it in. Location first will become the most important. And function / the type of business in that order, and sort of open to that.
Fantastic. Kieran, as we move into a close, is there anything I haven't asked you or we haven't covered that you'd like to cover before we wrap up?
Not really. Look, one of the things I learned in GE and I've learned in life is humility. And I joke to people say to me, "What are you talking about, humility?" And I go, "Well, look, you might think I'm a very confident, articulate person. I've learned that. That's not my natural state. I've had to learn that because I was ambitious enough to know that I needed to communicate quite well and be articulate, because that's how you get things done as well. You've got to be part of your toolkit.
Yeah.
But I do think listening and being humble and being open to criticism and change is a huge part of being a good person. And especially when you're in a leadership role, because you've got to be approachable. You've got to have be self-conscious in a good way, and leave space for other people to contribute and have a chance. And in actual fact, create the environment for other people to have a say and get a chance. It's not about you. Being a good leader is about them. Now, I learned that in my 30s. It took me a long time to realize it's not about you. Your ambition, your drive is all good, but it doesn't work when you're trying to build a team, because a team is about the team. It's about people. And to be a good leader, you've got to be completely focused on and completely at the service of the team. And even when they don't like what you're saying, you've got to explain to them that what I'm trying to do is for the good of the team. And that contradictory emotion for you and your team is something that you've got to work at and learn and be humble about, because you're going to make mistakes, and be open enough to say, you know what, I'm going to pick people who know what they're doing and are really good and let them at it and stand out of their way and promote them. And they might go beyond you. Well, then you've done your job, because that's the job. As a leader, is building a great team, getting the A players in, coaching and mentoring them and bringing them on, and then letting them go. Beautiful. That's really tough. Oh my God. I Leigh, in my when I got to my 30s, I was going, why am I working so hard? Why is this so hard? Why am I not getting promoted? What? And I went on a course, and the guy at the course was very blunt with me. He said, and it was all to do with leadership. He says, this is all about you, buddy. I said, what are you talking about? He's like, this is all about you. I was like, no, it's not. He says, let's keep going with 2 weeks of this, and let's figure it out. And by the end of the 2 weeks, he says to me, do you get it? I says, Jesus, man, this has been the most humbling and the most depressing 2 weeks I've ever had. And he says, but you've learned so much on this. I said, look, I can't believe this. I thought this was about me. I had to be better. I had to run faster. I had to be the big guy. And now I realize it's me. I got to give that energy to everybody else. Yes. He says, yeah, you've got it.
Wow.
That's tough. That is tough when you're
that's ego,
isn't it?
The
ego. It's so tough.
You're making me think of Lao Tzu. There's a quote: when the great leader's work is done, the people will say we did it ourselves. You're creating the space for others to do things. And to give the authority of power away.
Yeah, give it away. When I was playing, I had no ego. I was playing sport. I was the complete opposite. Complete team player, no problem. And then in work, it was like, let's charge. And I was so far ahead of everybody, I was losing them all.
Yes. We've seen that. We've seen that so many times with the leader thinks being so. If anything, I call it shepherd leadership. You're actually coming from behind. You're shepherding them and letting the others. And in fact, you'll see me doing that in Pod Squad most days. I'm down the back. Very rarely will I be at the front, because I'm down the back like a sheepdog, barking. So, Kieran, this has been unbelievable. I'm just going to go through some of the notes that I've taken. The social experiment that they did with you in West Belfast with the Christian Brothers, 80% unemployment. Free education as a result of clearly the intelligence and the genetics and the good luck. But then the Jack Welch, the target of double-digit growth every 90 days, being number one or number two in leading positions, the role of A players there, people willing to pay a premium. There's so much, mate, there's gold in what we've covered today. Some of my clients, I know straight away are going to go, mate, you've immersed me in gold. And then this whole thing around the education and the training gave us a community, but also a same language and the same methodology, and the mantras of Jack Welch around integrity, the whole concept. If people take nothing else out of this than the high say-do ratio, in terms of that language of high say-do ratio, let alone then competency, drilling in competency, particularly those life-saving critical competency factors, whether it be sales or leadership. Just unbelievable, mate. Get me an A-grade player to fix the problem. The 360-degree feedback, the training with other A players, then give them job tests, and then we rank them based on those things. It's not just what's my opinion, which brings you the values, edge, execution, energy, and then energizing. Mate, it's just absolute gold. Kieran, thank you so much for your time, mate. Absolutely brilliant. I'll get you a copy of this. Do with it what you want to do, and we're going to share it. Once you approve it, we'll share it far and wide. Mate, any final comments you'd like to make?
No, look, thanks for the opportunity of talking to you, and thank you, Leigh, for You're welcome, and the atmosphere in the pod squad, the swimming where we met, it's a great welcoming place, completely open, and everybody can come along, all abilities, etc. But very friendly and open. Super, super. I keep up that because it's such a lovely thing to do in a lovely place. But the people, back to our conversation, the people make that.
Yes.
The people make that thing, right? And it's there's a lot of negativity in the world, and lots of bad news, and so, but there's much more good news than bad news. The last thing I'd say is the world is full of good people.
Yes.
And when you come down to the pod squad in Perth in Northcott in the morning, and everybody's chatting, and we get in the water and have a cup, the positivity and the welcome is lovely. So
Well, we
thank
call
you
it
very much.
My pleasure, mate. And you guys are welcome. You and your wife and your daughter are welcome back anytime. You know that. You've got your white cap, so you're in. You're
Yeah.
a member for life now. So anytime we know you're going to come back soon. And it's just been great talking to you. And mate, we'll stay in touch anyway. But I do appreciate your time, and this is going to be great. Thanks very much, Kieran.
Thanks, Leigh. See you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Well, how good was that? Spectacular. Talk about A-grade players. How many pages of notes did you get? I mean, look at all the notes just from Jack Welch, everything about education, training, leadership, integrity, the say-do ratio. Be number one or number two in your market. Be willing, have to pay a premium, get people willing to pay a premium for your products. Recruiting, managing, nurturing A-grade players. It's just accountability, the high say-do ratio, to get things done, to move the needle, and then the values, edge, execution, energy, energize. There's so much there, folks. Execution, competency, strategy, planning, complete immersion, A-grade training and A-grade leadership training. Look, you want to find out more and you want to actually execute some of these plans in your organisation, do touch base with us at PDC. We've got the people to help you not only recruit A-grade players, but then induct, onboard, train, performance manage, shape the culture. We have over 47 different coaches, consultants who can actually make what Kieran's talking about in this podcast a reality, a living, breathing reality in your organisation, so that you have a high say-do ratio and your people get things done and they move the needle and you improve competency and have a high energy, high performing culture. If you like it, share it with friends, and I look forward to hearing from you at some point in the near future. I'm Leigh Farnell. You've been listening to Leading Your Best Life. Thanks again to Kieran Barr. Brilliant.